So, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Chat Derbyshire podcast, a podcast about mental health and suicide prevention. Today, we're joined by Ryan, and we're going to be talking about suicide attempts and suicidal thoughts. And this is for World Suicide Prevention Day, which is on the 10th of September. It can be quite a hard topic for people to listen to, so if you do need to take a break while listening, please do. And if you need anyone to talk to, you can ring the mental health support line on 0800 028 0077. So before we get started, as we do with everyone, we'd like to check in and see how you're doing out of 10. So yeah, Ryan, how were you doing out of 10 today?
Do you know what? I'm in a really good place at the moment, so I'm going to say 10.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's really good to hear.
Good.
That's so good.
It's not always been like that though.
No, definitely not. It's good to acknowledge when it is when it is going well. So no, that's great. If you wouldn't mind, just I guess to get us in the motions, just give a bit of introduction of who you are and a bit of what you're here to talk about today.
Okay, yeah. So firstly, Ryan, and work for the council. So I work within the Live Life Better team, but I also run a men's mental health podcast under the name Let's Be Frank, and just got
we'll pop a link in. We'll pop a link in.
We basically. I'm someone that's dealt with my mental health from a very, very early age. I would say earliest memories I've got is like 8 years old, which you know when you think about the thoughts that I've had at that age all the way, and I've had different thoughts around. Obviously not the same thing, but I've had similar experiences all the way through my life. It's got really, really scary at times. So
yeah, can you imagine?
There we go.
No, that's great. When so you mentioned around 8, what? I guess, can you remember sort of what those feelings were? I guess, back then you wouldn't have probably made the connections
Trying to process it, looking back now, and I was like a lost soul. That's probably the best way I can put it. I was a lost soul, and the very first memories that I have of wanting to take my life was round. I was sort of physically abused, shall we say, and I won't say it was by a close family member, but it was by somebody close to the family and stuff. Person. And it's something that I haven't shared with my family and stuff, but I've spoke about it through my own podcast, another podcast that I've been on. But I think my own family would find that difficult to kind of process and stuff. And and in a way, I think I'm protecting the person that did it, but I'm okay with that, and I've moved on from that, and I've dealt with that, and I've processed that, and where I am now, when I was like 8 years old, that very, very first memory.
I guess, how did it progress for you from being 8, I guess, over the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I was in the boys' brigade, and somebody was aware that I wasn't thingy and stuff quite right, and they kind of took me under the wing and pulled me through it. You know, so that was I was really That's fortunate great. At that time. Yeah. But like I say, I've gone through life, early teens to self-harm, more thoughts of suicide and stuff like that. So it's like I say, it's something that's been with me. Yeah. That's through really that whole of that time.
When did you start, I guess, to have a bit of a understanding of what all of this meant and what it was?
Do you know what? It wasn't. Obviously, as my life has progressed, I've started to understand more around, what suicide is and whatnot. But I would say it wasn't until my mid-30s that I actually look back now, and then I can talk about these things. Yeah. And it was through more acceptance of my mental health as it is today. Going back sort of 4 or 5 years now. Yeah. 40 next year. I'm just thinking to myself, it was only if you know. No, I'm 40 next year. So it wasn't until my sort of mid-30s that I actually felt like I was sort of accepting of this. Yeah, and it was a lady called Jane Lambert who's become a good friend. A friend of our podcast as well, so a friend of the Let's Be Frank, and she's been on an episode with us and whatnot, and she was kind of one of the inspirations behind the podcast as well. But she taught me a great technique to my early sort of mid-20s when I was still doing that sort of stuff, and I mastered it really well. But nobody noticed it. I went back in. I got into the army and stuff. Yeah. That was a time. It was quite a turbulent time. things didn't pan out as they should be. I ended up getting medically discharged and whatnot. And that was kind of a path to destruction. That was because within me coming out, and within sort of 12 months, I lost a friend that I went to school with, and he ended up going out to Iraq, and there was things getting done, and he basically didn't come back, and we were really good friends. And that again was that was where I started piling on weight. I went up to sort of nearly 20 stone. At that point, I also was in the pub every day drinking. So it was kind of that self-harm was manifesting through drink, through drugs, and through sort of not looking after myself type thing.
No, definitely.
So, and it's surprising how many different forms of self-harm, how it can manifest. Got myself into debt and a lot of other things that went on. So, I think that was up to like my mid-20s, that was.
Yeah, it must be really difficult. It sounds like there's so much going on. And I think you're totally right in terms of self-harm. When people talk about self-harm, and it's still so stigmatised that they think of the more, commonly known methods. But it can present in so many ways.
But it was one of the ways that I was trying to cope, I suppose.
As I say, it sounded like you were just trying to get yourself through. Through the day,
really. Yeah, absolutely. And, and then I'd end up going, finishing at sort of 10 o'clock at night, and I'd end up going to the pub. But on the way to the pub, I passed a Burger King, I passed a KFC, I'd pass a Chippy, and that would be my sort of, my only meal of the day, and that's what I ate. And then I was into the, then I'd be in the pub, and that's kind of the way my life kind of, for a good 2 or 3 years, manifested, I suppose.
What was your support network like through that? Did you isolate yourself, or did you, what? Or were you just not aware of?
I can't. When I look back now, I can't really say that I did have a support network, so to speak. I mean, I had a couple of like relationships that lasted like a year and a half, 2 years, and whatnot, but I was never sort of. That was another way. I was never sort of faithful through those relationships. So when I look back now, I kind of think to myself that was another sort of self-destruction kind of thing going on, and it was just, I think that was my outlet, that was my support network, that I was going into the pub and somebody would say hello, somebody would kind of, and for me that was where I was with my life at that point. But I look back now and I think to myself, that was no support network, that was just me putting some money over the bar, I suppose. But and it was a brutal time, and it wasn't until my now wife just kind of, we got together, and I've known my now wife, she's good, I would say a good 30 odd years that I've known her. Never lived in the same town. I mean, we lived like a good hour away from each other. We never went to school with each other. I mean, we met on holiday in Skegness, and that's how that happened. So bring on Skegleg, I say. But she kind of picked me up and dusted me off, and she went, right, move forwards and whatnot, and she's ever since then she's done that so many times. It was kind of a brutal time at that point.
It sounds really challenging. So I guess mid-20s to 30s, what did that look like for you? Was it still quite messy and hectic and not?
It wasn't. Do you know what? It wasn't as bad. I've always dealt with my mental health in different ways and stuff, but I would say sort of 26, 27 to sort of early 30s, I did have a bit of a rough ride, to be fair. And thinking back, I mean, I had a car crash about 2012. Took 2 fire crews to cut me out of the car. I was told I'd had a few other issues going on and whatnot, and it took me, again, it just put me back on my back foot. And got married in 2014, which, although that was a bit of a rough time, with that car crash happening and losing job and whatnot, because of the crash, it was. I can't say I was at a majorly low point at that point, and then, like I say, 2014, I got married, and I think it was about 6 months after I just turned around to my wife and I just went, I want to go back in the army.
Wow.
And she was like, do you know what, if that's what you want to do, go and do it. So I felt from the first time round till then, it had been a good 11 years. It had been 11 years. I wanted to go back in the army because I had some unfinished business.
Sounds like it.
And she went, do you know what? Just go for it. Just go and do it. So, but I had to fight tooth and nail to get back in because of everything that happened with the crash and stuff. Through 2015, I went back into the army. So it was November 2015. My God, that's 9 years ago. Again, so long ago. And I kind of, how can I put it? I kind of, when I went back in, I was like raring to go. I was the fittest I've ever been. I mean, I could run. I was running ultra marathons at this point, so I was running like 24, 48 hour runs and whatnot.
Wow.
So, you know, so I was fit. And I suppose looking back now, that was another outlet for you know, I won't say self-damaging, but it was kind of a replacement for damaging myself. Yeah. It was just another sort of compulsion to go and do it. And I was completing. I was doing like 10k runs in like 35 minutes, and so I was reasonably fit. And things were just at that point was really good, and then it all come to a crashing blow. At that point. So so
the running was another form of addiction, really.
Absolutely.
You, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I've just started running again now, to be fair. So, but again, I am in a really good place in my life and whatnot. Obviously, I've got a son now and whatnot. But I was just saying before we started recording how much of a absolute whirlwind and how much of a joy he is to be around and whatnot. Nightmare, but absolute joy. And I, you know, if it was at another point in my life, I don't think we would have been ready for him. But he come at the right time. That's all I can say. All I can say with him.
So you're in the army, looking back. What are those next few steps like for you?
Wow.
From what you can.
So this is where it got really sort of interesting. So I went in the November, and come mid-December, I felt something in my heel, just kind of. It was like a driving screwdriver through the ball of my foot. So I started to report this as an issue. Sent me to the med bay to kind of go and get sorted and whatnot. They put me on crutches and light duties for a couple of days, and I had to go back and whatnot. A week went by, and it was not showing any sign of improvement and whatnot. So they did no more, and they went, right, okay. They sent me to see the physio down at Purbright, the head physio, and she went, oh, you've got a stress fracture. Basically put into the rehab platoon to light duties and you focus on your fitness, you focus on your recovery and whatnot. And all I can say, it was anything but.
Right. Yeah.
And they then sent me for a scan on my foot. You've not got a stress fracture. You got some other stuff going on. All right, so I've now like lost a lot of muscle in my leg. I've lost, starting to, and things are progressively getting worse. I got brought back down to the platoon, the troop lines, and I had another panic attack a few days later. So I got took back up, and I got left in the med bay. With people coming in with sickness, diarrhea and other problems going on. They're all in there for a couple of days, and this went on for about 2 weeks. That was just put in this way for these panic attacks. And when I challenged it, I asked to see the Padre. So the Padre come along, and I just said, look, this is the situation, this is where I am. I need it dealing with. I'll go and have some chats and stuff and whatnot. And no word of a lie, I got took back down to the troop lines 2 weeks later. Somebody says, oh, we thought you'd gone. I'm just like, no. Been up there for the past couple of weeks. I thought, oh, right, okay. And I got called into the troop office, and the platoon side, or the troop side, and just went, all this seems too convenient. What? Says you know, you had all that stuff going on before the sort of Christmas. Then with your foot, now you're having these blackouts. It all seems too convenient. I'm just like, and that's where I started thinking about again suicide, and my life would be, I won't say majorly at this point. It was just like, oh, it'd be easy to do that than deal with that. And I won't say it was more of a fleeting sort of thought. rather than I want to do that. But it was just like, that would be easier.
Yeah.
Than dealing with it. And then another week went by and they went, all right, okay, we're discharging you. So you're getting unfit for army service. So if I wanted to go back, I couldn't go back anyway, which I have a tough time swallowing that pill, because in my head I still think there's something that I need to close, but I can never close that door again, which is fine. It's something that I have to deal with now. And then,
were you relieved at all when you left, or was it, was that, or was it that thing of like unfinished business?
It's
like
unfinished, but there was a sense of relief in I didn't have to deal with the tomfoolery anymore. I wasn't getting pushed pillar to post, and I wasn't being left in places, and it was just funny when from that point I got put into another like a block where they're getting ready. My paperwork got lost. Apparently, I was there for another 2 weeks. So all this went on. It was over about a 5 or 6 week period. It was just being pushed pillar to post, and coming out, it was a sense of relief, as in I don't have to deal with this tomfoolery.
Yeah. Do you think it's that, I guess, masculinity thing of men? Men don't struggle, men don't talk.
Yeah, I think there was that, but it's like I say, I was in my early 30s. I was probably one of the. I think there was only one person that was close to my age, and everybody else was like 17, 18, 19, and it was kind of I'm not here to deal with kid antics like this. I just want to come in, do get better, and get back into a platoon, get back into a troop. But I've not been able to do that. So when they discharged me, it was like, do you know what? I accept that. I'll move on from that.
Yeah.
But my leg wasn't right when I come out, and this is where my life just probably got to the darkest point I've ever been, and things that had happened way back when, as in as a kid, all the way through my life, with self-harm and sort of self-destruction. This was like, my leg wasn't getting better. I was still having panic attacks, but now I'd started having blackouts as well. And when I say blackouts, I could start coming down the stairs, and the next minute I know I'm at the bottom of the stairs on my backside or and my wife's come through and she's like, oh, not again, type thing. And it was not that as well. I had my speech had started to go, so there was times where my speech would she I don't know if you remember the programme Open All Hours, but she nicknamed me Granville. But it's fine, it was her way of bringing a bit of normality to my world and stuff. But my speech was like very much, it was either slurred or it was non-existent, and this would be 2 or 3 weeks spouts, and where I'd be like trying to get my words out, but my memory would start to go as well. So I had everything all kind of imploding on me, and nobody knew what was going on. I actually started losing muscle in my left leg. My foot wasn't getting any better. My body was just, the best way to put it would be shutting down. It was just shutting down, and it must have took a good 2.5 years for me to get some sort of acknowledgement and diagnosis from the NHS and whatnot. And this is where I'd really started to think about, she's like, she doesn't need this, she doesn't really deserve this, and this isn't the first time she's had to deal with something like this, and I don't want to put her through this anymore. And I actually started thinking to myself, right, I'm going to finish it all. And I just started thinking, right, I could do it here, could do it there. She's out now. She's out for the next couple of hours, so she won't have to be around when I do it. And it really started to manifest in my head. And the more I thought about it, the more it seemed the better option, so to speak. And but it wasn't. I wasn't at my lowest point at that point. It was at the point where I could kind of accept what was going on, but still be able to do something. I mean, over that time, there's days where I couldn't get out of bed because of my own low points. That when I've been at my lowest, you just don't want to move. You don't want to do anything, And
a big thank you to Ryan for sharing his lived experience so far around suicidal thoughts, self-harm. We definitely are looking forward to hearing more in part 2 of the episode. So yeah, this is the end of part 1, and part 2 will be live on the 17th of September. We look forward to speaking to you then. Thank you.